When something in your life doesn't make sense, do you assume it's broken? Or do you ever wonder if it's simply too early? Because there's a strange contradiction living inside you. A hunger that shows up the moment a question appears. Your mind reaches for an answer the way a thirsty person reaches for water. Fast, desperate, almost automatic. And if it can't find certainty right away, it panics. It starts building stories. It starts forcing shapes into the fog. It starts pretending it knows. But what if the reason this doesn't make sense is because you're trying to understand it too early? From the time you were small, the world trained you to chase conclusions. You were rewarded for finishing the worksheet, for raising your hand, for getting it right. You learned that confusion meant you were behind, that not knowing was a kind of weakness, so you became quick. Quick to name things, quick to judge, quick to label your feelings before they even had time to settle into their real form. And at first, that speed feels like power. But some truths don't live on the surface where your mind can grab them. Some truths are like the ocean, deep, cold, and patient. You don't figure them out. You enter them. You let them surround you. And slowly, without your permission, they change the way you breathe. Think about it. Have you ever tried to force a sunrise? Have you ever stood at the edge of night and demanded light as if the sky owed you an explanation? You can stare at the horizon with clenched fists, but dawn doesn't arrive faster because you want it to. It comes when it comes, and even before you can see it, something is already shifting behind the curtain. That's what confusion is like. It isn't proof that you're failing. It's proof that you've stepped into a place where your old map no longer works. And that's terrifying, isn't it? Because uncertainty feels like standing on a bridge made of mist. Your mind looks down and doesn't see ground, so it starts shouting. It says, hurry up, decide, choose a meaning, find the lesson, fix it. It tries to rescue you from the discomfort of the unknown, but the unknown isn't always an enemy. Sometimes it's a doorway. Sometimes it's the moment right before something new becomes possible. Imagine you're walking through a forest at night. No flashlight, no moon, the trees are just shapes. The path is just a suggestion. Every sound feels louder because you can't see what made it. In that darkness, your mind wants to sprint. It wants to escape the uncertainty by reaching the next clearing as soon as possible. But what if the point isn't to sprint? What if the point is to learn how to walk slowly while you can't see? Because that's where your deeper intelligence wakes up. Not the intelligence that collects facts, but the kind that can sit with a question without choking it to death. The kind that can admit, I don't know yet, and not collapse. You've been taught to treat life like a quiz. But life is not a quiz, it's more like a river. You don't solve a river, you step into it and it carries you, and you learn by moving with it. And right now, this chapter, this moment, this is not a lesson you're meant to get. This is something you're meant to pass through. So let's make a quiet agreement, you and I. For a little while, you won't rush ahead. You won't demand immediate clarity. You won't try to squeeze meaning out of every sentence like it's the last drop of something valuable. Instead, you'll let this be what it is, a journey. A slow walk into the fog where the mind has to loosen its grip. And if you can do that, something subtle will begin to happen. Not because I explain it perfectly, not because you suddenly become smarter, but because you finally stop wrestling the darkness and allow your eyes to adjust. Close your eyes for a second, just for a moment, and take a deep breath in, slow, and then let it out. Now notice what your mind does. Even here, even now, it wants to move. It wants to predict what's next. It wants to say, okay, I understand the point, and turn the page. It wants to grab a conclusion like a life jacket. But you don't need a life jacket in shallow water. You only need to learn how to float. So breathe again, in and out. And as you sit with that, Ask yourself gently, where in your life are you demanding an answer before it's ready? Where are you pressuring yourself to know what you're doing, what you feel, who you are? As if identity is something you can finalize like paperwork. Maybe you're in the middle of a change you can't name yet. Maybe you're outgrowing something, but you don't know what comes next. Maybe you're grieving, but the grief has no clear shape. Maybe you're healing, but it still hurts, and your mind keeps asking, shouldn't this be over by now? Listen, confusion is often the first honest sign that your old story is cracking, and that cracking can feel like fear. But sometimes cracking is how light gets in. There is a kind of wisdom that only arrives when you stop trying to drag it into the room. Like a shy animal, it won't come near if you're stomping around, chasing it, throwing stones at the silence. It comes when you sit still, when you become gentle, when you stop making the unknown prove itself to you. This is why the deepest truths don't reveal themselves on command, because they're not objects, they're experiences. And experiences unfold in time, like seasons, like tides, like the slow turning of the earth while you sleep. You can't rush winter into spring by screaming at the snow. You can only wait and listen and notice the smallest signs. One warmer day, one soft wind, one drop of melting ice that wasn't there yesterday. And maybe that's what you're being asked to do in your own life, to stop treating confusion like a mistake and start treating it like a threshold, a doorway you haven't walked through yet. Because when you're standing at the beginning of something real, it often feels like nothing, like emptiness, like delay, like you're lost. But the seed doesn't look like a tree. The dawn doesn't look like the sun. The first page doesn't look like the ending. So if you're here right now, if you're listening with that part of you that wants answers, I'm not going to punish you for it. That hunger is human. It's what kept our ancestors alive. Certainty feels safe. Certainty feels like control. But there's another kind of safety, quieter and deeper. The safety of trusting the process. The safety of letting understanding arrive when it's ready. And what you'll begin to notice, if you stay, is that some answers don't come as words. They come as recognition, a feeling in your chest, a shift in the way you see the same problem, a calm that appears for no logical reason. Like the sky clearing after a storm, not because you commanded it, but because storms don't last forever. So for now, don't try to solve this. Don't try to pin it down. Let it hover. Let it breathe. Let it remain unanswered just a little longer. Because the question that can't be answered yet is often the one guiding you somewhere important. And if you can resist the urge to rush, if you can stay with me here in the dark before dawn, then by the time we reach the end, you may not have a perfect explanation, but you'll have something better. You'll have a quiet knowing, not forced, not rushed, just arrived. So breathe once more and let this be your mantra as we move forward. I don't have to understand it yet to be moving in the right direction. Your mind is already leaning forward. Even as these words unfold, there is a quiet voice inside you trying to guess where this is going. It wants to be ready. It wants to stay one step ahead, like a runner who keeps glancing at the finish line instead of feeling the ground beneath their feet. This voice is not cruel. It is not broken. It is ancient. The mind rushes because it learned that speed once meant survival. In psychology, this is how we're wired. To predict danger, to name patterns, to turn the unknown into something manageable. If it can label the sound in the dark, it can decide whether to run. If it can define the feeling in your chest, it believes it can control the outcome. So it treats life like a puzzle, something to solve as efficiently as possible. But life is not a puzzle. It's a landscape, and when you spend all your time studying the map, you forget to look up at the mountains. Notice it now. Notice how part of you is already forming expectations about how this chapter should end, about what insight is coming next. That expectation feels subtle, almost helpful, but it quietly closes your hands before anything new can be placed inside them. Some truths exist before words, before logic, before conclusions. They can't be reached by thinking harder, because thinking is not the doorway. Feeling is. Presence is. So don't try to shut the mind up. Just watch it, like clouds moving across the sky. The moment you see the voice rushing ahead, you are no longer trapped inside it. You're standing beside it. And that's where real awareness begins. Let's slow this down. There's nothing you need to figure out here. Nothing to perform. Nowhere to arrive. For a moment, you can let go of the effort to understand and simply allow yourself to notice. Take a gentle breath in, not rushed, just natural. Pause for a heartbeat. Then let it go. Again. In, pause, out. As you breathe, imagine your mind opening into a wide, endless sky. Not a sky you have to manage, just a sky that already knows how to be open. And within that sky, thoughts begin to appear, one by one, like clouds. Some drift in quietly, others arrive heavy and dark, full of old worries or unfinished stories. Some move fast, some linger, but none of them stay forever. Watch how they pass without effort. The sky doesn't chase them away. It doesn't hold on to them either. It allows. Now notice something subtle. Between one thought and the next, there is a small gap. A pause, a brief silence where nothing is asking for your attention. You might miss it at first. That's okay. You're not meant to grab it, just sense it. Like the stillness between waves. These spaces matter more than you think. Your mind is like a river, always moving, always changing. Thoughts flow the way water does, restless, unpredictable. But you are not the water. You are the riverbank. The quiet presence that remains while everything else moves past. You don't have to stop the river to understand it. You only have to realize you're not being carried away by it. If this feels unclear, that's perfect. Clarity doesn't arrive with effort. It settles in when the storm grows, tired of raging. Something is shifting now, even if you can't name it. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unremarkable, when you stop pushing. Not because you've solved anything, not because you've reached a final answer, but because something in you grows tired of forcing clarity. And in that moment, something else takes over. Softer, wiser, unrushed. This is where the shift begins. You've felt this before, even if you didn't notice it at the time. Think about trying to fall asleep. The harder you chase it, the farther it runs. But the moment you stop trying, when you let your body sink into the bed without expectation, sleep arrives on its own. Or think about searching for the right words. They never come when you rehearse them endlessly. They appear when you relax into the conversation. Understanding works the same way. Surrender isn't giving up. It's releasing the extra tension you didn't realize you were holding. The clenching of the jaw, the mental leaning forward. The quiet demand that life explain itself right now. Letting go can feel frightening. Control has always felt like safety. If you're not steering, who is? If you're not thinking, what's left? But beneath thought, there is something steady. An intelligence that doesn't rush, that doesn't panic when things are unclear. It's the same presence you've touched in moments of awe, standing under a vast sky, watching waves roll in, losing yourself in music or silence. Remember the storm. Waves don't calm because the ocean is ordered to be still. They settle when the wind stops. And the wind is the constant need to figure everything out. If you feel different now but can't explain why, that's the sign. Understanding is no longer being chased. It's already on its way. So here you are, And maybe you're waiting for the moment where everything is finally explained. The sentence that ties it all together, the idea that makes it click. But notice what's actually happening instead. There's no big reveal. Because what you were waiting to understand was never a concept. It wasn't a thought you could carry away with you. It was a shift, a quiet turn in how you're looking. A recognition that understanding doesn't come from adding more, it comes from letting things fall away. At the beginning, the question felt heavy, unanswered, almost frustrating. Now it feels different, lighter, not because it was solved, but because it dissolved. You stopped wrestling it. You let confusion exist. You noticed the mind rushing ahead. You watched without trying to control. And when the effort softened, something simple remained. Presence. That's why this feels almost too easy now. Truth often arrives disguised as obviousness. Once the noise clears, what's left doesn't announce itself. It just is. Quiet, steady, familiar. You couldn't understand this at the beginning because you were still trying, still reaching, still tightening around the need to know. Now, you're not doing that anymore. And that's why it makes sense. Not in your head, but in your body. In the space behind your thoughts. In the calm that doesn't need to justify itself. So let this be the closing, not as an answer, but as a reminder. Let the words land slowly. Let the space between them speak. I don't need to understand life, to be present with it. A pause and silence.